Okay, brilliant. The recording has started. So good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you for joining us today. We really wanted to just put this session on for you all, just to make sure that you have got all the information that you require about the up and coming ECF and what that actually means for you as BSO schools. We did send a presentation out to all schools, but I recognise that sometimes the information on presentations is not quite as easy to access as having somebody talk you through it. And the other thing that we wanted to pick up today on the presentation was what exactly it's going to mean for you in practical terms in your school, and what the support for NQTs, ECTs is going to look like, and what commitment that's going to require from you. The reason we wanted to hold this session quite early on is because I recognise that a lot of you are going through the recruitment process at the moment and considering about whether NQTs, ECTs are still the way that you want to go, and whether it's going to cost you a lot more money, what the commitment is going to be, and whether that's something you can continue to support in your schools. So hopefully the session today will give you a bit more insight into what's going on. We don't know all the answers yet. There are still some things that the DfE have not confirmed, but we have got a pretty good overview of what ECF is going to look like and what it's going to mean for you. So I'm going to hand over to Izzy for the first part of this session. She'll be talking to you about the practicalities and what ECF actually means and about the framework. And then I'm going to pick up on the session after Izzy to talk to you about what it means for BSO schools and in practical terms, what type of support you're going to have to put in place for these teachers, and also the cost implications for you as schools. If there are any questions, we do have a chat pod that's going to be live, and Mark is going to be managing the chat pod. So we'll try and pick those questions up as we go along. And if there's any questions at the end, we're happy to take those. We'll send a copy out of the recording, and you'll also have a copy of the slides if you want to share those with staff at a later date. So over to you, Izzy. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. It's so lovely to see lots of familiar faces here today, so thank you for joining us. So from September 2021, the DfE are rolling out the Early Career Framework, the ECF, and the planned changes to statutory induction arrangements. The ECF will impact on NQT induction processes in UK maintained schools, academies and independent schools, and in British schools overseas. In this session, we'll run through the changes and how ESP can support your schools. We're still awaiting more detailed guidance, as Amanda said, from the DfE this term, but we can hopefully address most of your concerns and questions today. Information on the ECF can be found directly on the DfE website, and a link to this information will be shared with you all after today's session. The ECF reforms will create a step change in support for early career teachers. They'll be referred to as ECTs moving forwards, providing access to a structured two-year package of high quality professional development. The reforms are part of the government's teacher recruitment and retention strategy, the consultations on the introduction of IQTS and the international education strategy. The ECF is fundamentally designed to improve the training and development opportunities available to new teachers, both at home and in BSO schools worldwide. So there aren't any changes to the statutory eligibility of international NQT induction. So as is the case now, induction and ECF will be exclusively available to schools who have undertaken a BSO inspection within the last 6 years, have full membership of one of the DfE recognised associations, so that's AOBSO, BSME, COBIS, Phobia and NABS. And also they're working with a DfE registered appropriate body to support their early career teachers. And in terms of eligibility of teachers for induction, of course, they must have QTS, qualified teacher status, in order to undertake induction. So there are no changes with that. The Early Career Framework builds on initial teacher training and provides a platform for future development. The content of the ECF builds on and complements initial teacher training. The ECF underpins what all early career teachers should be entitled to learn about and learn how to do based on expert guidance and the best available research evidence. As is the case for other professions, areas covered in initial training will be covered in greater depth as part of induction, as teachers continue on their journey to becoming experts. The ECF has been designed to support early career teacher development in 5 core areas: behaviour management, pedagogy, curriculum, assessment, and professional behaviours. In order to ensure congruence with the 8 teacher standards currently, the content of the framework is presented in 8 sections. In developing the framework, behaviour management was thought to be encompassed by high expectations and managing behaviour, so standards 1 and standard 7. Pedagogy was thought to be encompassed by how pupils learn, classroom practice and adaptive teaching, so standards 2, 4 and 5. And curriculum, assessment and professional behaviours were thought to be encompassed by standards 3, 6 and 8 respectively. Part 2 of the teacher's standards defines the behaviour and attitudes which set the required standard for conduct throughout a teacher's career. These standards must always be met and stand alongside the ECF, so they're not explicitly referenced within the framework. While the ECF is presented around the teacher standards for clarity, the ECF is not and should not be used as an assessment framework. ECTs will not be expected to collate evidence against the ECF, and they will continue to collate evidence against the teacher standards, just as they do currently for their induction. The main change with these reforms is that all early career teachers undergoing induction will be entitled to a 2-year training and support programme based on the ECF. BSO schools need to be aware of the following changes. The extension of the induction period to 2 years, 2 academic years. ECTs will be entitled to a 10% timetable reduction allowance in the first year, and 5% timetable reduction allowance in the second year. And ECTs will be entitled to a programme of training based on the ECF, as well as the support of a dedicated mentor. And this will be in addition to the support of their induction tutor for their induction. The DFE will be issuing the final implementation guidance for appropriate bodies such as ESP before Easter, and we will ensure that this is made available to you as soon as possible once we've received that. The end of the induction period will continue to be marked by a decision as to whether performance against the teacher standards is satisfactory. Given the extended length of induction, the department will amend guidance on the process for monitoring progress against the teacher standards during induction. To reduce the burden on ECTs and induction coordinators and appropriate bodies, the department have outlined that 2 formal assessment points should take place during the 2-year induction. 1 midway through the induction and 1 at the end of the induction period. The department also intends to advise that these formal assessments should be supported by regular and collaborative progress reviews to enable appropriate bodies to quality assure the induction process. These informal performance reviews should take place in each term where a formal assessment doesn't, and the appropriate body will be able to provide exemplar materials for these. The purpose of these reviews is to ensure that all parties are aware of any emerging issues with an ECT's performance, and then additional support can of course be implemented as required to ensure successful completion of ECF. So a couple of things that are important to note. It is really important to note that appropriate bodies will continue to play a key role in induction. As well as ensuring that early career teachers receive their statutory entitlements and are fairly and consistently assessed, from September, ABs will also be required to check whether ECTs are receiving a programme of support and training based on the ECF. This can be provided by the school independently or via your school's appropriate body. There will be some ECTs who will have started induction in this academic year, but not completed by the 1st of September, for example, if you've had a January starter this year. The DFE intends to allow these teachers until September 2023 to complete the 1-year induction period. After September 23, These teachers will still be able to complete induction, but would need to then go to the full 2-year period. ECTs will still be able to progress on the pay scale in maintained schools in the UK as per current arrangements. So just worth you knowing that. And the final slide from me, next steps in preparing for the ECF. Well, the DfE has stated that there's no immediate action for appropriate bodies, school, or their ECTs to take at this stage, but of course we want to help you to get prepared. The department is aware that as the sector increasingly begins to prepare for upcoming changes, additional details on these changes are needed, and these will be provided as further guidance for schools and appropriate bodies by Easter. And as I said before, we will definitely update you as soon as we have that guidance. So just a reminder that any NQTs who've started in this academic year who aren't able to finish by July will still be able to complete in the 1-year timeframe. ESP are offering support for the NQT class of 2020-2021, irrespective of which appropriate body they've used, as they prepare for their second year working in a BSO school in 2021-22. ESP's recently qualified teacher programme, that's RQT programme, provides a second year of support and access to NQTs whose induction year has been impacted by COVID as they enter the critical second year of teaching. So I'd now like to hand you back to Amanda, who'll run through the ESP support for NQTs, or ECTs as we should call them now, and RQTs for the coming year and beyond. Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you, Izzy. I recognise that for all of you, there's quite a lot of information there to take on board, and you might want to go back and just revisit some of those slides that Izzy's talked about. But one of the things that we're really keen to do is to make sure that you as BSO schools can continue to employ NQTs, ECTs, and that the support for them is quite easy for you to access. So when developing our package, we've been looking at what that package might look like for you as schools if you are taking on NQTs, ECTs from August or September, whenever you go back. So let's take a look at the ESP support package and what it might look like for those new teachers coming into your schools. So ESP will continue to be the appropriate body for any new teachers, NQTs, ECTs coming into the school. They'll be able to access some high quality ECT CPD material. We will be accessing this material from the DfE's material that's been created, but what we'll be doing with that material is making sure that it complements the international setting and that also that it's very suitable for BSO schools. So we can provide that training material that you might want to either deliver yourself or you might want us to deliver that for you. We'll also ensure that you're kept up to date with what's happening with ECF, if there's any changes, to make sure that you're ahead of the curve and you can get those in place for your NQTs, ECTs. So the appropriate body support will continue, but it will just move to a 2-year package of support. So that 2-year package of support is going to cover the following. Thank you, Mark. The 2-year package of support will mean that we will register the new teachers on our AB NQT manager, which all of you are used to using at the moment, but instead of being registered for a year, they'll be registered for a period of 2 years. The CPD program that we'll be able to support you with will now focus on the key elements of the early careers framework. So as Izzy described, those key elements will be behaviour management, pedagogy, curriculum, assessment and professional behaviours, and we'll be able to provide you with material to either deliver yourself or we're happy to deliver that for you as part of the package. The implications for you, just to run over those, the basic one is the NQTs will now be known as ECTs. The induction will be for 2 years, and as Izzy described, there are 2 points of formal assessment at the end of the first year and at the end of the second year. But what we'll be encouraging is the message that's coming through from the DfE that there will need to be progress and interim progress meetings and reports at the end of each term to keep us on track of where the NQT is, the ECT, and how they're progressing towards those standards. ECTs will need 10% dedicated time in year 1 and a change with the 5% in year 2. The ECTs will have a named mentor and a tutor for 2 years, and the professional development for the ECTs is over the 2-year period, allowing those skills that are taught in year 1 to be embedded in year 2. So the big question I think that a lot of schools are interested in is the cost implications. So we've looked carefully at how we're going to cost this package. And what we've tried to do is we've tried to keep it as in line as possible as what the 1-year package cost was. So our all-inclusive 2-year induction and CPD package will be available to schools at £500 per ECT, which is reduced to £425 per ECT for schools with confirmed AOBSO membership. So if you're an AOBSO school, it will be 425. If you're not, it will be £500 per ECT. And that's for the whole 2 years. It's not per year. The reason we've tried to keep this competitive is because we want to be able to continue to support you without employing NQTs. We know that you value them. We know that they bring a lot to your schools, and we don't want this to be anything that puts you off having those newly qualified teachers in schools. We want you to see it as a benefit, and the fact that, you know, they're going to get 2 years training out of that, which ultimately will ensure that they are rounded teachers at the end of it. So that's the cost implications from us. Moving on, what about NQTs who are currently on a 1-year program? So lots of you will have NQTs who are just about to do their midterm assessments, and they'll be qualifying as NQTs at the end of this academic term. There is an option for those NQTs to carry on and have a second year of training if you wanted to keep them in line with the idea as the ECF, that they should have 2 years of training. We've been doing this for a number of schools this year, and we've been running something called an RQT program, which is just a package of support based around the teacher standards to help them embed the things that they've been doing in year 1. And a lot of our NQTs have found this extra year of CPD really useful because it's allowed them to reflect on the practice that they've had in year 1 and build upon that. So that RQT package will be available for any NQTs that you've currently got that you want to have another year of support. We will be sending out information about that. So if you have got NQTs at the moment and you'd like to register them on CPD for next year so that they get that second year of support, we will send the information out to you. So what now? We are keen to ensure that any newly appointed ECTs for the autumn term are also aware of the ECF and understand the support they will receive. Surprisingly, or perhaps not surprisingly, a lot of teachers who are currently in training are not really that familiar of what's going to happen with the ECF year. So we're finding that a lot of graduates that we're talking to are not aware yet that, you know, they're going to get 2 years support instead of 1. So there is still quite a lot of information to go out to those graduates so they're aware. We'll be running some sessions at no cost for our partner schools, for all BSO schools. If you're employing newly qualified teachers from September or the autumn term, we're happy to invite those teachers to our sessions just to run through with them what ECF actually means for them and what type of support they can expect in their first 2 years. So once you have an idea of how many ECTs you might have in the autumn term, if you let us know and if you're happy to share details with us, we can include them in our sessions so that we can do some pre-work with them to help them understand the framework that's going to sit around them to support them in their first 2 years of teaching. If you have any current NQTs and you'd like them to receive support for an extra year, and we can do some CPD with them, just let us know and we can register them for you as well. The best email to send us any requests on or any information on is nqt@espeducation.co.uk, and we'll get back to you straight away and try and support you as much as possible. I recognise we've done a lot of talking at you, which is probably not the best practice, but hopefully that's given you an overview of where we are with ECF at the moment and how it might impact you as a school. Now, I know we've got some questions in the chat, so Izzy, you might be able to help me with some of the questions, and maybe Mark as well, if we've got any that still need answering. So I can't see the chat at the moment. Mark, are there any that we need to pick up?
Yep, so just going through as we speak, been a variety of questions around the minimum term for induction. Just to let you know, as Izzy's put on a couple of responses, that is in the final instruction we're awaiting from the DFE. As you know, the minimum we can do is 1 term under the current framework. We're hoping that it'll be a similar sort of percentage reduction based on prior experience under ECF, but as soon as we know, we will let you know. Questions around RQT support and whether schools can compel their staff to engage in it, Amanda?
Sorry, just repeat that again,
Yeah,
Mark.
so RQT
It.
support for 2021 NQTs, and does it have to be optional, or can schools compel their NQTs to have support for another year?
That's a good question. I think, well, it has to be optional. They don't have to have that support in the second year. But I think if NQTs are aware of the fact that, you know, teachers from September will be getting 2 years support, it will be seen as a benefit for them to have some additional CPD. It's optional for that cohort whether they join in on that or whether they choose to receive that support. I think, you know, we are encouraging our NQTs that we work with all the time that professional development is the way forward, and that keep referring back to those teacher standards is the way to embed practice and improve practice. So we're happy to talk to NQTs about the benefits. From a school point of view, yes, it would be optional whether they choose to engage in that in year 2, and that's for the current cohort. But moving forward, they will have to do the 2 years.
So Izzy, one for you. I know you've picked it up in response to Stuart, but just to stress for everyone, the timetable reduction of 10% in year 1, 5% in year 2, and the implications on international schools that often offer more than that as standard.
Yeah, I'm glad that was raised actually, because I wanted to cover that today. I'm quite often asked about the allocation of time off timetable for NQTs. And what I always advise is that the guidance from the DFE is, if you imagine that is based on think of a typical primary school teacher in the UK who would be expected to be on timetable all day, every day, Monday to Friday. So that 10% time for them, in addition to the 10% PPA time, is definitely needed, and it is something that schools do have to ensure they're providing in the UK. So when an international NQT comes to me and says, oh, I don't know if I'm getting that, I would say, look at your timetable with your mentor and look at the time you've got off timetable. Invariably, they end up having more time off timetable, I've noticed, than in the UK, because there are other subject specialists, like, you know, the Islamic teachers and the Arabic teachers, and the PE teachers, music teachers, who come in as specialists and quite often relieve the NQT of their teaching for that subject. So it's about looking at the timetable and saying, actually, how much time do you have off timetable each week, and making sure that they do definitely have the equivalent of the 10% PPA time and the 10% NQT time in year 1, which invariably I should imagine they probably do. If they don't see it as that separate NQT time, it's good to sit with them and say, right, let's allocate, this is your PPA time and this is your NQT time. And then in year 2, you're looking for a 5% reduction on timetable, which hopefully they would have anyway. So yeah, hopefully that clears up that one for you, because it is something that's often asked anyway. But usually I would say, don't worry, just look through the timetable carefully.
Thank you, Izzy. And Nazish just replied to your question, does the price for induction include the training sessions? Yes, the ESP package will include a number of CPD sessions, so it won't just be the 5 themes, it will be a number across the 2-year period, and all ECTs registered with us will be invited to attend those online sessions, either in real time or by access to a post-session recording that they can then pick up any questions via a one-to-one or remotely. So yes, anybody that is registered with ESP will have an all-inclusive AB plus CPD entitlement. If you don't use ESP as your appropriate body, then that's a question to ask of who's supporting your school. But for those of you that use us at ESP, they'll have AB plus CPD. Izzy, just one on NQT Manager from Nathan. Can you please repeat the logistics of evidence in standards on NQT Manager for the ECF? It still refers to the professional teaching standards we currently use, or are they going to be changed by DFE to a new ECF set of standards under the new headings?
Okay, so we've spoken to NQT Manager, the team there last week, and they are getting as well prepared as they possibly can be, but they haven't had any more guidance than anyone else, unfortunately. So they have got things lined up. So as soon as the next announcement comes out, they'll be able to notify appropriate bodies about what changes they're going to be making to fit in with this. But the key thing is that for the purposes of induction, NQTs will still be assessed against the teacher standards, so that won't change. So the reporting system will need to change on the system because it won't be those termly assessments, formal assessments, but the actual, how they're assessed against the standards will remain the same, and the teacher standards will remain the same for the purposes of induction. Whether they tie in somehow the new ECF into NQT Manager, I don't as yet know. But as I said on one of my slides before, the ECF mustn't be assessed, NQT's progress mustn't be assessed against ECF. It must still be assessed against induction, against teacher standards during induction.
And finally, from the questions we've got at the moment, from Sarah, what framework will an NQT extending their induction period into the next year follow? So just to pick up on what Izzy said previously, anybody that has commenced induction under the current scheme will have until 2023 to complete it as that current model of induction. So we're only talking about those starting NQT ECT from the implementation of ECF in August. So if you do have anybody starting even at Easter, they will still do it under the traditional one-year model. That closes off the questions we got at the moment.
Just one more mark around the cost of the NQT Support Package. So the cost will be the same as this year. Have you got that cost?
Bear with me and I will get it.
Ruth, I'll just pick up on your question about what is the process if an ECT moves schools within the 2-year induction. Unfortunately, we don't know about that at the moment. The DFE guidance doesn't say what the minimum period of induction will be. So whereas at the moment we know you can bank a term or you can bank 2 terms, move on, you've got that under your belt. We don't yet know, which I understand is very frustrating for everybody. We don't yet know what that will look like. So whether it's that there's a minimum period of 2 terms or 1 year before you can bank it and move on, we don't unfortunately know at the moment.
So back to the RQT program for 2021 NQTs looking for an additional year's professional development support. The package is usually priced at £250 per NQT, but for anybody that's completing their NQT induction with ESP this year, it's being reduced to £150 per teacher. So that's the response to that question around the additional year RQT support and the price.
Thanks, Mark. Bernie, I'll pick up on your question. The 2 formal assessments, will they look like the current termly assessment? Yes, we believe so. So the formal assessments will be one at the end of year 1, one at the end of year 2. That's what the DFE have led us to believe so far. And they will be similar to the formal assessments that are done termly now. And in between, there will be a progress review that will be carried out. So I should imagine that NQT Manager will be planning for that already. If not, we've already thought about that, but I should think that they will definitely be making sure that that's part of the process on the system as well, thinking about that term of support.
And Daniel, I can try and pick up on your point. rationale hasn't really been shared clearly with us either, but from what we've picked up and from the documents that we picked up questioning, it's around recruitment and retention, based on some data that the DFE have about when most teachers leave teaching, which surprisingly or not surprisingly is in the first 3 years of teaching. So I think the 2-year induction period, they're hoping that that 2-year induction will support them, give them more confidence, help them develop their skills, and hopefully help them to remain in teaching for longer. So it is all linked back to recruitment and retention. Is there anything else about the rationale?
So that for the DFE, the key message is this is around recruitment and retention. They're trying to bring the early stage of a teaching career in line with other professions, where there is a greater support system for the first 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, so just to add to what Izzy said there, the implications on BSO schools are actually quite often less than they will be on UK maintained schools, because a lot of you are providing that 2-year support informally, because you're taking people on sort of 2-year contracts and you want to retain them for the period of their contract and beyond. So quite often that support is already in place in the BSO sector. And as Izzy alluded to, the rationale that's been shared is that actually when you look at when people leave or potentially consider leaving other professional careers, so medicine, law, they have a 2-year preceptorship model in place where they're supported for the first 2 years, and that drop off is significantly less in the early career. So the methodology is based on other professional careers in the UK system, where support is provided for a longer period for those straight out of training. I think that concludes the questions we've got so far, unless anyone has anything else.
You can always drop us an email anyway with any questions if you've got anything that you'd particularly like to ask by email instead.
Yeah, and thank you everybody for giving up time today and joining. I hope that session's been useful for you. We are always here at the end of an email, and if any of you want any one-to-one support, we're happy to give you a call and try to help you and go through this to make sure that it works for your school. So we'll share the slides with you, you'll get the recording, and any questions, just drop us a line and we'll be here to help.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for joining, everybody. Really lovely to see you.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Take care.
Bye. Bye.